Wow, could that video be any more vintage 1970? I love the groovy hippie dancing. That's so awesome. In many ways, Norman Greenbaum's Spirit in the Sky is one of the ultimate one-hit wonders. It reached number 3 on the Billboard chart, spent 15 weeks in the Hot 100, but that was pretty much it for Greenbaum. His subsequent releases were not well received by the public, and by the 1980s, he was working as a sous chef and kitchen manager in a restaurant. But Spirit in the Sky will always be a classic. It was once placed in the top 10 of one-hit wonders in a Rolling Stone readers poll. We have to talk about the lyrics on this one, which have long been the subject of much interest and controversy. They contain several references to Jesus, in spite of the fact that Greenbaum is Jewish. Now, I suppose this kind of thing isn't that unusual. For example, most of the classic Christmas songs were written by Jews. White Christmas by Irving Berlin, Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire by Mel Torme, just to name a couple. The story goes that one day Greenbaum saw Porter Wagner singing a gospel tune on TV and said to himself, hey, I could do that. He claims the song came very quickly, that he wrote it in about 15 minutes. But that's what artists do sometimes, right? Often they write from experience, but sometimes they have the ability to project themselves into situations that they're not necessarily that familiar with. But Greenbaum did commit one little flub, as he later called it, that upset a few Christians. It's the line, never been a sinner, I've never sinned, I've got a friend in Jesus. I guess not being familiar with the Christian world, Greenbaum didn't realize that the whole basis of Christianity really is that we're all sinners but have been redeemed by Christ. So I thought that was pretty funny. It's just not something you hear a Christian saying generally. Musically, this tune is a real fascinating mash of styles. That killer guitar riff with the incredible 60s fuzz tone sound is straight up blues, could be taken from Muddy Waters or John Lee Hooker. Greenbaum had a fuzz tone circuit built into his Telecaster to achieve that tone. But on top of that, we get these very gospel-sounding backup vocals provided by a group called the Stovall Sisters from Oakland, California. And you mix all of that together with a very slinky groove, and somehow you end up with something that sounds almost proto-glam rock. I swear I could hear T-Rex doing this song. When I die and they lay me to rest, gonna go to the place that's the best. When I lay me down to die, gonna go up to the Spirit in the sky. Mississippi Queen is one of those tunes that has a really excellent backstory, very rock and roll. So the genesis of the song came way back on a hot and sweaty night in August of 1969 on Nantucket Island in Massachusetts. Mountain drummer Corky Lang was playing a club gig with his previous band when in walks what Lang described as a drop-dead gorgeous southern chick in a see-through dress covered with flowers. Lang was enjoying watching the girl dance when all of a sudden there was a power outage. I guess it was one of those instances where, due to the unbearably hot weather, everyone in the vicinity was cranking their AC 24/7, and it was just too much. The system went kaput. So in a desperate attempt to save the gig, Lang apparently launched into a long, free-form drum solo. He didn't need electricity for that. in which he maniacally banged on his cowbell and belted out "Mississippi Queen, you know what I mean" at the top of his lungs. Lang was later quoted as saying, "I just had to keep this chick dancing. I was so turned on by her." He also claimed that he did permanent damage to his voice that night by screaming so loud for so long. But perhaps it was all worth it in the end. A bit later, when Lang had joined Mountain, guitarist and vocalist Leslie West came up with the classic riff that fuels this tune, and West's riff was melded to Lang's lyrics and drum part. By the way, this riff was once placed at number 10 on Guitar Magazine's list of the 50 heaviest riffs of all time. That guitar riff, by the way, is simplicity itself. 4 notes on the intro, E minor pentatonic. And the verse pretty much consists of slid power chords in E and A, the 1 and 4 chords in the key of E. And of course, this is probably coincidental, but I've always felt like I could hear echoes of this riff in a couple of other famous riffs. No Quarter from Jimmy Page, and Beat It from Michael Jackson, of all things. I'm sure some of the astute musicians among you noticed that I changed the key on No Quarter. They're in C sharp on the Zeppelin original, but I moved it to E for comparison to Mississippi Queen. Definitely some strong similarities there. This is the kind of thing that I would love to ask Jimmy Page if I ever got the amazing opportunity to sit and have a beer with the guy. Hey man, did you cop the No Quarter riff from Mississippi Queen? Leslie West's lead playing is also quite straightforward. He was never one of these shredder types, always just very tasteful and bluesy. In fact, I remember reading an interview in Guitar Player magazine in the 80s in which he had set up a sort of rock guitar school, and he was complaining about how all the young kids coming in didn't have much interest in the finer points of guitar playing like vibrato and tone, and they all just wanted to do this right-hand Van Halen stuff that was big at the time. He described it as sounding like a Bach organ fugue, which it kind of does. I love what he does in the intro. His use of an E major pentatonic gives the whole thing a southern rock feel. These guys came from Long Island, but I think West was smart enough to know that the lyrics called for a more southern feel. But right at the end, all the G sharp notes that he's been playing turn to G natural, and so it's minor right at the end, more of a bluesy feel.
Everybody was dancing in the moonlight, dancing in the moonlight. Everybody's feeling warm and bright. It's such a fine and natural sight. Everybody's dancing in the moonlight.
Our final one-hit wonder is another one with a really interesting backstory, albeit a much darker one than Mississippi Queen for sure. This song was written by a guy called Sherman Kelly, and the first version recorded was by his group called Bafalongo in 1970. Believe it or not, Kelly's inspiration came after being beaten by a violent gang on the Caribbean island of St. Croix. This gang went on to murder 8 American tourists, and as for Kelly, he sustained multiple injuries, including several facial fractures, and was left for dead. An experience like that would certainly make most people far more pessimistic about life, but Kelly went the other way. While recovering from his injuries, he wrote the song, he says, as a vision of an alternate reality, the dream of a joyful and peaceful celebration of life. Sadly, the Bafalongo version didn't perform well, but the song was given new life when Sherman's brother Wells Kelly introduced the tune to the group he was playing drums for, Paris-based King Harvest, who recorded and released the song as a single in 1972, and that's the version that most of us know and love. It reached number 5 in Canada and number 13 in the States. Incidentally, years later in 2000, British band Top Loader released their version of the song, which was a worldwide hit and went multi-platinum in the UK, which just goes to show that a great song is multi-generational. Most people have never heard the original Bafalongo version. It's decent, more straight-up rock.
We get it on most every night, and when that moon gets big and bright, it's supernatural delight.
I think the King Harvest version is more successful primarily due to the keyboard part supplied by Dave Doc Robinson. It's got a playful quality that fits well with the theme of the lyric. The chord progression is a classic cycle of fourths progression. Now I'll explain what that means. The basic chords are C minor 7, F minor 7, B flat, and E flat. So if we start from C and start counting, what do we get? C, D, E, F. Boom, that's 4 steps from the C to the F chord. Now counting from the F chord, F, G, A, B flat. Boom, another 4 steps. Now counting from the B flat chord, B flat, C, D, E flat. Once again, alphabetically 4 steps. And a nice touch, the E flat chord is followed by a B flat / D. The / D means that the bass note is D. So the bass movement is leading us down to where we started, from E flat, down a half step to D, down a whole step to C, and we start over again. Really nice. We get it almost every night. And when that old moon gets so big and bright, it's a supernatural delight. Everybody was dancing in the moonlight. That's it for another one. Thanks so much for hanging out to the end. And remember, if you'd like to make a financial contribution, look in the description of this video. Buy me a coffee, PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle. Also, of course, like, subscribe, all the obvious things. We'll see you soon.